She is 17 years old, standing backstage in London, in a gown she probably didn't even feel like herself in, and in a few minutes, her whole life is about to split into a before and an after. The 30th of November, 2000, the Millennium Dome. A teenager from Berkeley, who was actually preparing to study aerospace engineering just months earlier, is crowned Miss World. Not runner-up. Not one to watch. The winner. Out of nearly 100 women from around the planet, it's her name that gets called. And here's the part most people skip past. She wasn't even trying to become a beauty queen. Her family saw an advertisement for the Miss India pageant and, almost on a whim, sent in her photographs. She went in expecting nothing. She walked out as one of the most photographed young women on earth. You'd think that's where the hard part ends, right? Crown on your head, doors flying open. The world suddenly knows your name. But that's not how this story works. That's not how any real story works. Because the moment Priyanka Chopra walked into the Hindi film industry, something ugly was waiting for her. The same country that celebrated her as a national hero now had a different question. Is she even fit to be a heroine? She was too thin, they said. Her skin was too dark, they said. There were whispers, cruel nicknames thrown around film sets, comments about whether a dusky girl could ever really be a leading lady in an industry that, at the time, worshipped a very narrow idea of beauty. Some doubted her acting. Some doubted her looks. Almost nobody, in those early days, was in her corner. And then came the part that never makes it into the highlight reel, the silence. For close to a year and a half, work simply stopped coming. Not because she wasn't talented, not because she wasn't willing, but because, as she has said herself in interviews, she ran straight into the unglamorous machinery of the film industry. Favoritism, politics, roles that quietly disappeared because someone knew someone. There were stretches where almost no one in the industry wanted to work with her at all. Imagine that for a second. You win one of the most prestigious titles on the planet. Millions of people know your face. And still, you sit at home, phone silent, wondering if the thing you want most is ever going to happen for you. This is usually where people quit. This is usually where the story just ends. A promising beginning, a painful middle, and then nothing. But she didn't leave. She stayed in the fight she couldn't yet win. And this is the first real turning point in her story. The one most people never notice, because it isn't loud or cinematic. She didn't wait for the industry to change its mind about her. She changed her strategy instead. She took roles that weren't safe, that weren't designed to protect her image as a former beauty queen. In 2004, barely into her career, she played a manipulative, morally grey character in Itras, a bold, almost reckless choice for someone still trying to be accepted as a leading lady. It wasn't the pretty girl role people expected from a Miss World winner. It was a gamble. And here's the principle sitting quietly underneath all of this. Confidence was never the feeling she was waiting to arrive. It was the decision she kept making, film after film, rejection after rejection, whether the feeling showed up or not. She didn't feel ready. She didn't feel wanted most of those months. But she acted anyway. That's the whole idea this video is built around. Confidence is a decision, not a feeling. Nobody wakes up magically fearless. You decide to move, and the courage catches up to you somewhere along the way. Now fast forward a few years. Because the story doesn't stop at she got some work. It gets bigger. It gets riskier. And it gets a lot more interesting. By the late 2000s and early 2010 seconds, Priyanka Chopra isn't fighting for scraps anymore. She's one of the biggest stars in Indian cinema. She could have coasted. She could have kept playing it safe, taking the glamorous roles, staying inside the lane that made her famous in the first place. Instead, she does something that terrifies most people at the peak of their success. She chooses to get uncomfortable on purpose. In fashion, she plays a model whose rise and fall exposes the dark, exploitative side of the very industry that made Chopra famous in real life. It's not a flattering film. It's not an easy watch. And it wins her a National Film Award. Then comes Barfi, where she plays a young autistic woman with a level of restraint and vulnerability that had nothing to do with glamour at all. And then, in 2014, she takes on the role of Mary Kom, an Olympic boxer, training hard enough to physically transform, for a role that demanded raw strength over polish. Think about what that actually means. A former Miss World, a woman once told she wasn't pretty enough for the movies, deliberately choosing roles that strip away prettiness altogether, choosing sweat over glamour, choosing complexity over comfort. That's not an accident. That's not luck. That's a pattern, and patterns tell you what someone actually believes about themselves. She wasn't chasing approval anymore. She was chasing range. She was chasing the version of herself that could do hard things, not just look good doing easy ones. And here's where the tension shifts again, because just when it looks like she's found her lane, the biggest, most terrifying leap of her entire career is still ahead of her. In December 2014, at a point where she is arguably one of the most bankable actresses in India, with a career built across more films than most actors make in a lifetime, Priyanka Chopra signs a talent deal with ABC in the United States. Let that sink in for a second. She's not chasing a guaranteed hit show. There is no project attached yet. No script. No promise. Just a bet on herself in a country where almost nobody in mainstream television knows her name, where she'd have to start again from something close to zero. This is the part of the story that should feel suspenseful, because it actually was. Hollywood has swallowed bigger stars than her whole. International crossovers fail constantly, quietly, and are forgotten. She had every reason to stay where she was safe, successful, and adored. Instead, in meetings with network executives, she pushes back on something specific. She says she doesn't want a role written around stereotypes, the kind of narrow, exaggerated Indian character Hollywood so often reached for. She wants a role where her ethnicity isn't the point, where she's simply allowed to be a lead, full stop. That conversation eventually becomes Quantico. In 2015, she steps into the role of Alex Parrish, and in doing so, becomes the first South Asian actor ever to lead a network television drama in America. Not a supporting character, not comic relief. The lead, the face on the posters, the reason people tune in, and it works. The premiere pulls in real, strong ratings, a noticeable jump over the show, airing in that same slot the previous year. But numbers aside, something bigger happens. A generation of South Asian viewers, many of whom grew up seeing almost no one who looked like them anywhere on American television, finally see someone who does. Leading the show, not standing at the edge of it. Here's the turning point buried inside this chapter, the one worth sitting with. She didn't wait for Hollywood to decide she deserved a chance. She walked in and defined the terms of the chance she was willing to take. That's not confidence as some magical inner glow she was born with. That's confidence as a boundary. A decision made in a room, out loud, before anyone had proven her right. And that's the second principle worth taking with you. Real confidence often looks like stating what you will and won't accept, before you have any proof it'll work out. She didn't know Quantico would succeed. Nobody does, going in. She decided anyway. Now here's where the story keeps climbing. Because success like that doesn't erase risk. It just changes its shape. After Quantico, she doesn't retreat into comfort either. She takes on Baywatch in Hollywood, continues building a global music and production career, and steps behind the camera as a producer through her own company, backing films and stories, including The White Tiger, a story about class and ambition in India that eventually earns international attention and awards recognition. She also becomes a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador, using the platform she fought so hard to build to speak for girls' education and children's rights around the world. None of that happens by accident, and none of it happens because fear disappeared. It happens because, chapter after chapter, she kept choosing to move before she felt fully ready. The struggles didn't stop. The criticism, at times, didn't stop either. What changed was her relationship with the fear itself. She stopped waiting for it to leave the room before she made her next move. And that, right there, is the whole story underneath the story. It was never really about beauty pageants, or box office numbers, or ratings, or awards. It was about a decision made over and over again, across 2 decades, in 2 different countries, in 2 different industries, that both, at different points, told her she didn't belong. So, here's the real question this video is actually asking you. Where in your life are you waiting to feel ready before you move? Waiting to feel confident before you send the application, start the business, walk into the room, ask for the raise, begin the thing you've been circling for months, maybe years. Because if her story proves anything, it's this: the feeling of confidence almost never arrives first. It arrives after. It arrives because you already decided to act without it. She didn't feel confident during those 18 silent months, with no work. She didn't feel confident walking into rooms in Los Angeles, where nobody owed her anything. She decided anyway, and the confidence built itself, decision by decision, room by room, film by film. That's the door you get to walk through too. Not someday, when you finally feel ready, but now, in the decision you make today, whether the feeling has caught up yet or not. If this story moved something in you, I want you to do one thing before you go. Down in the comments, write just one word. One single word that represents the goal you've been circling, the decision you keep putting off until you feel ready for it. Just one word. Let it be out there. Let it be real. And if you want more stories like this one, real journeys, real struggles, real decisions that changed everything, hit subscribe and come join the Golden Grace family. This is where we come to remember that the golden chapter of your life isn't waiting for you to feel ready for it. It's waiting for you to decide.